not the same. And it isn't a theory, it's actually data driven by tens of thousands of surveys and the best scientific literature on the topic. It's not a theory, and I didn't come about it because of my political perspective.
Jordan's theory is very much evolutionary, that there are inherent differences in men and women. Mine is very much more social role theory, if you like.
This debate took place between Jordan Peterson and Sophie Walker, at the time the leader of the UK's Women's Equality Party. On the surface, it was about gender equality, but underneath the shouting, there was real disagreement about evidence. So let's start right here, and I want you to watch this moment really carefully.
So the Scandinavian countries have moved more towards gender equality than any other countries, and the personality differences in Scandinavia have increased rather than decreased, and the proportion of women who are choosing STEM fields has decreased rather than increased. So as cultures become more gender neutral, the number of women who choose STEM fields decreases.
What do you mean by STEM fields?
So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So if you let men and women make their choices, what actually happens is that they specialize in different situations, and you don't get equality of outcome.
Could they not have been programmed to have those views from the moment we raise them and give boys Lego and construction?
No, because what happens is that as countries get more egalitarian, which means there's less programming of that sort, the differences get larger, not smaller. And the scientific data on that is clear, and most of it was generated by people who have a left-leaning bias, so you can't blame it on conservative scientists. It was a shock to everyone to find that out.
This is the single most statistical idea in the whole debate, and most people don't understand it. Take height, for example. The average man is about 5 inches taller than the average woman, but you see tall women and short men every single day. The middle overlaps massively. But now zoom to the extremes. The tallest people alive, almost all men. Here's the part that nobody mentions though. The shortest people alive are also almost all men. Men don't just win at the top, men spread wider. That's the actual finding. More men at the genius end and the struggling end. That's why prisons are 93% male, but so is homelessness, and so is suicide. So is dying on the job. A tiny difference in spread creates massive gaps at the extreme. That's not men winning, that's called variance. Now moving on to the second part.
Sophie,
I think the difference between Jordan and me is that we look at evidence and we lean towards different theories. So Jordan's theory is very much evolutionary, that there are inherent differences in men and women. Mine is very much more social role theory, if you like, and that men and women are taking on different roles due to the expectations that society puts on them. And it's interesting that Jordan frequently cites Scandinavian countries where they've made more, there's nowhere in the world that women are equal, but Scandinavia has made the most progress towards shared parenting, etc.
Yep.
That said, it's not done yet. There's nowhere in the world where this is done yet.
But it's having the opposite effect that the gender equality types predicted. Opposite, not the same. And it isn't a theory, it's actually data driven by tens of thousands of surveys and the best scientific literature on the topic. It's not a theory, and I didn't come about it because of my political perspective. I looked at the data. What it showed was that as countries become more egalitarian, the differences between men and women grow. They don't shrink.
So what I'm interested in is data and analysis as well, and I'm particularly interested in the ones presented, such as the ones by the University of Southern California, which discovered that change towards gender equality is actually being slowed by beliefs that are legitimizing social inequalities on the basis of sex. And I'm also interested, like Jordan, I look at the data and I look at the studies, and I'm really also very much interested in studies like the analysis that was done by the American Psychological Society, which looked at 45 analysis of whether there's sex difference over 20 years. And its conclusion was that men and women are basically alike in terms of personality, in terms of cognitive ability, in terms of leadership. But what it did find was that media depictions of men and women as fundamentally different perpetuate misconceptions, as does workplace bias.
Oh God, so it's my fault.
So, no, well, you're leaving soon. It's
Men and women actually are more the same than they are different. But the issue is that small differences at the population level can turn into very large differences at the extreme. So, for example, men and women are broadly similar with regards to aggression, although men tilt a little bit more towards aggression. So that if you picked a random person out of the population, male and female, and you guessed that the male was more aggressive, you'd be right 60% of the time. But if you take the 1 in 100 most aggressive people, they're all male. And that's why the overwhelming proportion of people who are in prisons are male. Now, do you want to equalize that, just out of curiosity? What about bricklayers? They're 99% male. And we've got about 3/4 of the population now in universities in the humanities and social sciences are female.
Yeah.
Are we going to equalize that?
Did you notice what just happened here? Peterson listed 3 facts. Bricklayers are 99% male. Prison inmates are overwhelmingly male. And humanities students are 75% female. And then he asked the obvious question. Are we going to equalize those two? Because if your principle is if any gap by sex is injustice, then you have to apply the standards everywhere. You can't point at the CEO chair and ignore the prison cells and the construction sites. Or you just admit that you only care about the prestigious jobs at the top. One of these is a principle and one of these is just elite redistribution with feminist branding. Now let's move on to the third part.
And men work longer hours. They work more dangerous jobs. They're more likely to move. They're more likely to work outside. They're more likely to participate in jobs in the STEM fields that are scalable. They make more money for those reasons. And that's all hidden under the idea that the reason that men and women make different amounts of money is because of their gender. It's a very simplistic analysis, and trying to
Michael,
address
I was just going to say, Sophie, can you come back on that?
What I'm trying to equalise is opportunity and choice.
Fine, let's equalise
You
choice.
agree on that.
But we won't get equal outcome that way.
And I think that what happens then, nobody knows, because we've never done it yet.
We do know what's happened in Scandinavia.
But it's not fully got there yet.
No, but it's going in the opposite direction that everyone predicted, and strongly.
I think one of the things I loved about Jordan's book, which I speed read last night, so forgive me, Jordan, I've not read every line. But one of my favourite rules in Jordan's book is Rule 9, which says, assume the person you are listening to might know something you don't. And I think that in a country where men outnumber women by 2 to 1 in Parliament, in local government, where women's voices are not equally represented in media, where our education systems still are teaching boys and girls ideas of pink and blue. Yep. What I'm trying to do is work with thousands of optimistic, hopeful people for change.
Okay.
The data shows more gender equality leads to bigger gender differences in choices. Sophie's response is, well, we haven't done enough yet.
And I think that what happens then, nobody knows, because we've never done it yet.
We do know.
But that's not how evidence works. If you increase the dose of a medicine and the patient gets sicker, you don't conclude the dose was too low, you re-examine the theory. The theory was, differences come from socialization, remove socialization, differences disappear. Scandinavia ran that experiment for 40 years, the difference grew. At some point, the honest move is to update the theory, not double down. And note, Peterson isn't arguing against equal opportunity. He explicitly agrees with it. He says you can't engineer equal outcomes when there are free people making different choices. The honest answer isn't left or right, it's that free people make different choices and the society have to decide what we have to do about that. Well, this is the end. If you like my breakdown of this video, then please subscribe and like this video. Till then, take care everyone and bye-bye.